Welcome, everybody, to the San Antonio Realty Pros podcast. I really hope you guys enjoy this upcoming episode. We intend to bring you guys the best real estate content possible, and you never know, you might learn a thing or two. So sit back and enjoy the show. Today we've got
Colby Dunagan and Brandy Dunagan, and we run Colby Dunagan Appraisals.
Okay. Yeah, so really we had you guys in before and just kind of chit-chatted about coming in on the podcast. And, the first kind of iteration of this whole deal, we want to talk about appraisals. And we've had some podcasts in the past that you guys have probably heard that talk about how important appraisals are. And so David... he's had you guys come out and do some stuff too for the other side of your business as well. And we're probably going to do a whole nother, jump off into that. So, but just go ahead and introduce your guys yourselves and just kind of tell us where you kind of come from and how long you've been in the area, what your business model really relies on.
Sure.
And stuff like that. So.
Sure. So my name is Colby Dunagan. I've been appraising in San Antonio almost 15 years. I came in during the last boom in 2006 is really when I got roped in. My father's been appraising in San Antonio for 25 plus years. So I got pulled over to the dark side finally and trained with him, trained up and kind of learned my way around. And Brandy and I have been doing our own deal
since 2013.
Since 2013 out on our own. So our primary clients are lenders, AMCs, they call them, appraisal management companies, which is the third party that lenders place in between us and them to kind of keep our objectivity about us. And so a lot of them are national clients. So we don't see a lot of faces many times of our clients. They're in California and other places. It's a lot of email correspondence and online type stuff, but yeah, that's we do some private work as well for homeowners that are wanting to establish a listing price. Maybe they've had some type of addition or something like that where they're unsure about where they should price their house, and we'll work with realtors in establishing that. So those are a couple different services we provide, as well as just measurements. So that's the other side of our business is just providing measurements to realtors to verify sizes pre-listing.
Okay.
So, and I'm originally from San Antonio, and we've got two little girls, and we love it. We don't see ourselves leaving the area. So.
Oh, no.
and Brandy, of course, is born and raised in San Antonio also. So
born and raised San Antonio, corporate background, and he kind of talked me into, over years, he beat me down until I joined up. Yeah. But it was the best decision I made. Yeah. So it was definitely a learning curve, and then I decided, at first I thought I was just going to come in and do the office and make him more efficient, and I kind of developed a love for appraising, decided to get my license, and so I'm currently a trainee and about to take my test and become a certified appraiser also.
No pressure.
I know.
How long is that process for becoming an appraiser? Is it like a sort of like a real estate agent? You got to go through like 6 different courses or something? Or
no, it's long.
It's long. It takes about 2 years.
Oh wow.
They just actually dropped down how long it takes. You could do it technically in a year, but I don't know how you can physically do that.
Right.
They dropped it down to 1,500 experience hours, and then you have you have tests and courses that you have to take before they even give you a license to be a trainee.
Right.
So you've got to get all that done. You got to become a trainee. Then you've got courses you do during your traineeship, and then at the end of that, you have to take your big test.
Okay.
So it's a lot.
And the hardest part that I hear from trainees all the time is trying to find a sponsor.
Oh, really? Yeah. So people don't want to bring other guys on because they want to.
It's time.
So what I feel like what happens maybe is the guys, they latch on to a company or another appraiser, and then they kind of learn the ropes and they branch off on their own.
Right.
Is that the reason why?
Right. And I think a lot of guys that have been doing this for a long time are worried about that.
Yeah.
They have a mentality that they're training their competition and what's the point. But for us, it's kind of like it's giving back to the profession.
Yeah.
If somebody wouldn't have allowed me to do this whole thing and train and learn, then we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. So I feel like it's part of giving back to the profession and just having hope that they're not going to steal your clients, that, you know, treating your employees right and doing right by them, and hopefully they'll stick by you and help your business grow.
Well, that's the definition of capitalism, right? Like the strong will survive. Like the ones that are providing the top service and they're doing the right thing are going to be the ones that last the longest.
Exactly right.
And so your companies, and just like real estate agents, the amount of agents in a given demographic area kind of ebb and flow with the market. So you might have 12,000 realtors in the state of Texas, but when business starts to drop off, I mean, so does that number, right? And people just don't. I'm not going to go to school to be a real estate agent if the market's crashed.
Right.
Exactly.
So
for the last few years, we've heard about the appraiser shortage. It was kind of always going around in the industry that there's a shortage. The median age of appraisers is going up, and there's not going to be new blood to fill the spots. But since this latest boom, I don't hear any more of that talk.
Yeah.
So I know the trainee numbers in the state of Texas. I don't know exactly what they are, but they've grown exponentially from what they were.
The biggest issue now is we have adequate trainees, but it's trainees that are getting a sponsor, and it's not just about the competition; it's about the time. Because if you're doing it right, then you've got a lot of hours that you're putting in on top of your schedule to make sure that they're becoming an efficient appraiser, an efficient moral appraiser, somebody who's doing things by the books.
Right.
And so that's also the rewarding part, because if you can do that for somebody over the course of 2 years, then you know that you're helping another appraiser to be out there that's actually doing it the right way.
Right.
Well, and that's what Steven and I do when we find agents that are on the other side of our transactions that aren't just quite getting it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take that time to kind of mentor them and be like, hey, you know, what about this? What about that, right? As long as it doesn't interfere with the betterment of our client, right?
Sure.
But so it's kind of the same thing, you know, because if we're doing, the way we look at it is if we're doing that, we're treating people right and we're educating them, it helps our profession as a whole be looked at in a lot better of an aspect.
Right.
I agree. And you wouldn't believe how many reports Brandy and I see for review assignments that I don't know how they passed underwriting. I don't know how they were used for loan purposes. I mean, there's some stuff, just like in the realtor world, there's people out there that maybe don't do the due diligence or take the time that they should, and that we want to change that. We want to do our part in training up people correctly, and so that it, like you were saying, we want our profession to be thought of in a positive light, and people really doing their research and their due diligence and doing the right thing, regardless of what pressures out there to meet whatever value. That's not the way we operate. The data is the data, and we're going to reflect that.
Okay. Well, so, you know, around the basis of like the business aspect of what you guys do, are you guys seeing any kind of infiltrators into the realm of appraisals, like what we as agents see, what we call an iBuyer? You know, you have this big giant corporation that says, "Hey, I've got a great idea. I'm going to cut realtors out of the process," or not so much. I don't want to say it like that. I don't want to say that these iBuyers are cutting realtors out, because technically they're still using real estate agents, but they're
circumventing the system.
Yeah, they're trying to get around the traditional face-to-face, you know, hand-to-hand transaction basis of a sale or a purchase, and they're going in, and it's creating a lot of waves, and it's creating a lot of dissent between, you know, the ranks of real estate agents and these real estate companies. But I feel like if there wasn't a need for it, it would have never came around. Like, it wouldn't be if there wasn't some sort of a need. And so do you guys kind of see that, or is it just straight up like you guys are appraisals or appraisers are the only way to go to find valuations on property?
No, there is a move in our industry to mine the data that we've been applying in appraisals for years and years. So CoreLogic has just purchased Win Total a la mode, which is the biggest, as far as I know, the biggest appraisal software company out there. And they are actually mining data So when we input information about a comp, they're keeping that information about that property to use. They're trying to automate the process.
They're trying to make their own sort of AVM. So basically an automated valuation model or
we use that in RPR.
Right. And so you've got iBuyers, and so when these people want to sell their house, they're going on, they're answering questions about their house, they're inputting their, square footage off of their tax records, the year built. They're kind of leading what condition their house is in, and they're giving them, okay, so you should list at this price. Nobody's walked through the house.
Right.
Nobody's checked on marketability. Nobody's verified their GLA.
Right.
So, but we also see that
What's GLA?
Oh, sorry, GLA square footage.
Gross living area.
Yes.
Okay.
So I feel like more often than not, when I see the work that you've done or on stuff where I've been a trainee on an appraisal and it's been an iBuyer type thing, rarely are we closer to that contract price than when we have an experienced realtor that's worked with them.
Okay.
So a lot of times, sometimes there's money left on the table. I feel like more often than not, there's money left on the table for those iBuyer.
You're talking the open doors.
Yes.
You mean money left on the table from the seller's pocket that he's not incurring?
Oh, yeah.
Correct. Because they're
So they're
going
losing. What you're seeing is that the people that are selling their house to an open door or a Redfin, they're losing money. Right, and that's verifiable from you guys.
We've seen it multiple times because there's just not the due diligence that a live person inside that property would give to it.
Right.
So
See, that's exactly what David and I we've been speculating like this whole. I mean, we haven't seen any clear cases of it because we've won listing appointments. David and respectively has won listing appointments for properties where he was going up against an open door situation, right? Four, in fact, David has, and so. We have speculated like, oh yeah, this is happening because we see the numbers and the data when we pull the comps and we talk to these clients and David specifically, you can speak on this. He's seen the paperwork where they've given them their quote, and it's drastically different than what it's really worth.
right.
It'd be interesting if realtors could start tracking. I mean, if you're the buyer's agent and you know what that deal is closing for, or what so the buyer is going to know what their appraisal came in at.
Yeah.
If you're able to track that information of what the property appraised for and what the property actually sold for, and kind of track that over time, if realtors work together on that, that would be very interesting to see.
Well, what we're
Do
supposed
class
to
action fraud suit.
Yeah, so what we're supposed to do is, if you're on the selling side of the deal, you're the listing agent. In the MLS, when you go to close that sale out, when it goes to sold, you're supposed to fill out, I don't guess there's any like hard line rules, which there should be. We need definitive information logged in there. But say the list price was $249, and we contracted at $240, right? And we finally get to closing, and we give them $5,000 in concessions for closing costs. And say we give them $2,000 in repairs that we have receipts for. Those numbers should be taken into account, but they're not.
Right.
By Zillow and Realtor.com, because Realtor.com's algorithms really only pick up list price versus sold price and the difference in between the percentages.
And then having that information actually be correct.
Right. So it's hardly verifiable. If I have a client that comes to me and says, hey, I've never had this happen, but 10 of my deals last year were listings, and what I would say is, when I go in there and put the information, I put 100% of what's correct, the type of loan that it was, all the information that it asked. But if a lot of people don't, they just put the sold price, what the contract's final. They don't add the commissions, not the commissions, but the concessions in there. So what we see is those numbers are directly reflected on the Zillow's estimates, and that's where those numbers come from. But they don't take into account any of the other stuff and factors that fall in line with that. So I think that's important that these companies are trying to figure out a way to mine this data, but it comes back down to the real estate agents themselves, I guess, to enter that information into the MLS.
It does, which can also impact appraisals.
For sure.
Because we're at the mercy of the information via MLS.
Right.
So if we're relying on information that we assume is correct and it's not correct, I mean, that,
Garbage in, garbage out.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, you're just not going to get a clear valuation. And what I see when we pull up the MLS stats and the market stats for Sabor, you see year over year I think we had like a 4.5% increase in median home sales price. And I mean, how do we know how correct that is? Because these people aren't actually taking into account the $5,000 and $6,000 in closing costs, which happens a lot more than you would think. And so when I look at the RPR, which I use exclusively for my comps, because it's a little bit more robust system. But even in that, I have to sometimes go back into the MLS and verify if they did even put closing costs in there, because the AVM or the RVM on RPR system, it's a lot closer, what I've found, just as an initial, if there's been a lot of movement in the area, when I pull comps, like say an area that doesn't have a whole lot of sales movement, like you won't see the AVM have a lot of stars, it's got up to 5. And so it's a confidentiality or a confidence, I'm sorry, it's a confidence measure of how confident they are about that RVM. And so what I see a lot of times with low star RVMs or AVMs, what you see is it's a little bit further off, but it's not as bad off as like the Zestimate and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know, man. I think it's something that if I were you guys, I'd be like, hey, well, how can I figure out how to create or help, with this? Is that something that you guys have ever thought about doing? Like maybe create an app or something, or find some software that you could. I know you probably haven't got that far in the weeds yet, but
Yeah, it's
like
just
be the next millionaires that figured it out. Right?
the problem with the problem with AVMs though is that you don't have somebody inside that house, so it's not taking into account the actual condition of the home.
Because the picture on the outside,
Sure.
and then you don't see what the walls got holes and
You can't smell either.
Yeah, you can't,
Yes,
exactly.
yes.
So were they smokers? Did they have pets?
Did they have
Were
pets?
they both?
I've been inside houses where the smell of cat waste is so strong it'll make your eyes water and you'll throw away your clothes after you leave there because and it impacts value. I mean, there's just no way to. And the pictures on MLS, most of them are pretty and they make everything look.
But they're not scratch and sniff.
Yeah. But then sometimes you walk into that house and that house
Looks nothing
doesn't
like the
resemble those
picture.
pictures at all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
a lot of the realtors, especially if it was a property that was for rent for a while, they'll keep using the same photos. They'll never go out there and update it. And then if they go to sell it, they use the same stock photos they've had forever. Like I showed a house in New Braunfels, and out front in the photos it had like a 3 or 4 foot palm tree. I get there, that thing's like 30 foot tall now. They had that thing rented for so long, they were using the exact same photos, and I didn't even know I was at the right house. I'm like,
This
right
don't
there
look right.
Is that technically allowed? Do they allow you?
you're not supposed to.
You're not supposed
Whenever
to.
there's now, is a palm tree a big change? I don't know. But if there's changes to the house, it's supposed to be current, right? So you should really be showing the current photos of the house in its current condition. Now, if I rent it out for a year, tenant leaves, and I put a new one in there, and there's been no change, the walls haven't been painted, we haven't put new flooring in there, then what's the harm, right? But if you go in there and you paint the walls, or you put new flooring in there,
Sure.
you went from Formica to granite or quartz or whatever, then maybe you painted the cabinets. Because what you want to do anyway to be representing your client in the best aspect is to show it in its best condition, right? So if you've done some updates, do some photos.
There you go.
Right? Or you get some people that don't only put like 4 photos on there because in Sabor your minimum is 4 photos. In Central Texas MLS, it seems to be 1. So a lot of times they'll put 4 photos of the outside. They'll use the same photo 4 times to check the block, right? Which I think should be trolled a little bit more by the powers be and be like, hey, you need to throw something else out here. There's 4 sides to the exterior. At least throw 4 exterior photos on there, right? Don't use the same photo.
See, I immediately get suspect when all I see of a house is exterior photos. I'm thinking, what's going on inside that house?
Yeah.
Right? You're going to open up that door and be like, whoa.
Especially if it's like a foreclosure or something like that.
Yes.
The foreclosures, you walk in, they've ripped the ceiling fans down, they've ripped the plumbing out of the what?
Oh
The
yeah.
dishwasher, all the
But see,
appliances.
I don't get it because if somebody's going to go look at that house, they're going to see it anyway.
Right.
Save them the trip. Me, if I see 4 photos in there, I'm telling my client, hey, there's something going on here, right? Maybe it is a rental that's being sold. And maybe the tenants didn't want photos of their personal stuff being put on the internet. So you never know.
Yeah.
But to me, if you only put 4 photos and it's all the same photo of the front, I think something's, my mind automatically goes to Criminal Minds or NCIS or whatever. I'm like, what's going on behind
They're hiding
the scenes?
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that just makes the difference between sort of the way that we run our business and the way that other real estate agents and property management companies kind of do their thing. Like maybe they got 200 or 300 properties, which is, it's not in my interest to tell them what they can or can't do or shouldn't do, but our ethical standard tells us here in our business that we need to make sure that we do the right, the pictures, like we update it every time. And so what I've proposed with David a couple of times, and we may start implementing it here before too much longer, is as a benefit to the landlord or the owner of the property, we do a scan of the house with the Matterport before a tenant moves in, and then when they move out, do another scan and compare them. Say, hey, look, we can definitely 100% tell you that this wasn't there. It's verifiable.
Right.
So, it's something that we need to definitely, get the deposit back.
Right.
So, photos are great, but a photo, it takes one angle, right? But this Matterport tour that we have, it takes a 4K, 360-degree spherical.
Yeah, and we've been able to use it to save our clients some money from the buyers coming through and trying to nickel and dime us for some repairs on the last day. And trying to do that, fear factor on them, like, hey, if you don't give us $1,500, we're going to walk because this wasn't there before. And then we go and we pull up the 3D tour, and we take a screenshot of it and be like, you mean this right here? Yeah. Shut up, I'll see you tomorrow. But it happened to Steven once, it happened to me. Somebody was like, hey, there's a stain on the carpet. We couldn't see it. Now that furniture's gone, it's there. So Steven's like, sent me a picture of it because I was driving. He's like, send me a picture. I sent it to him. I'm like, here's what I'll do for you. I'll give you I'll go to at home, I'll buy a $100 gift card for your clients and
throw a rug over it and buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put a little area rug over it and call her good. Right? And I told her, because I was like, that carpet's like 15 years old anyway.
It was mobile home carpet.
Yeah.
It doesn't last.
Right.
Anyways.
Yeah.
I was like, it's going to, like, there's no
blue.
value.
Yeah.
Royal blue.
Right.
And
that does have to be a valuable tool, though. Just the transparency. There's everything's above board. Everything's available for everybody to see.
Yeah.
That's how our business is too.
Yeah.
It's all about just be transparent.
Yeah.
Just tell it like it is. Don't try to hide the
somebody's
facts.
going to find out eventually.
Somebody's going to find out.
Yep.
And if you actively try to cover that, that's not good for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was thinking when we were talking about the AVMs, about the automated valuation stuff, I feel like it's most accurate maybe in like a track home neighborhood.
Yeah.
Everything's about 15 years and younger. You got 3 or 4 plans.
Yeah.
Then your margin of error is going to be a lot smaller.
Yeah.
But if you go into a neighborhood that's older homes, some are completely outdated, some are completely updated. How is a computer going to know what your home is?
Well, it's like going to Rockwall Ranch, right? All those homes in there, there's a lot of houses in there, and they're all custom homes.
Yep.
There's quite a bit of movement in there.
Yep.
But because they're all so different, so vastly different with detached garages and pools and all this extra crazy stuff that you see in these $800,000 homes, how accurate is that going to be?
Right.
I mean, there may be a ton of movement, and it's the law of averages, right? But like you said, with these track homes, there's like 3 elevations for all 4 plans.
Right.
Typically, about 80% of those houses will have the same elevation, right?
Yeah.
So the elevation plan looks, it really is almost like identical twins,
Right.
all through the thing. So it's a lot easier.
Right.
There's not so much disparity between the pricing. So I feel like they are, and you'll see the confidence scores be a little bit higher on those, I'm sure. But yeah, I think it's important to. I think technology is definitely the way that things are going to kind of go. We already see it today. Like our phones, we use them for everything. I'm out on site showing a house. I got my RPR up, and I'm, they're asking me, even if I didn't run comps or if it's a Zillow client that I got to go see the house the same day.
Right.
I don't have time to prep for that. If I got a couple of days, I'll prep for it and bring a whole package with me. But if I'm just showing up and then we're at a house and they're like, hey, can we go see this other one for sale? And I'm like, oh, there it is. And I can right there easily. You couldn't do that back in the day.
And I feel like that's a lot what sellers and buyers want from their realtors. It's not that they want to use iBuyer, but some people are just like, I don't want to sit and talk to this person forever. I don't want to have a phone call every 2 seconds. They want to text the realtor. They want everything to be technologically easy for them.
Yeah, you got to cut out the monotony for sure in the transaction. And there's a lot of people that enjoy that interaction.
Right.
But I just read something yesterday. It was millennials. It was a post on Facebook. And it said that it was a mortgage about mortgages. Millennials will take over more percentage of the mortgages in the country right now, at this part of the year or this year, than all the baby boomers and the whatever other generation before the baby boomers. Like, they will own most of the mortgages in the industry.
And what's appealing to them? The commercials that say Rocket Mortgage, come online.
Quick, fast, easy.
Yep.
Do it with an app.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's not a sales pitch for these people.
Right.
Well, even the regular banks are going to making everything electronic now. I hate it. But,
This is the guy that hates technology.
Well, I mean, I had a client that was trying to go with a bank that had the app, and he was just having problems with it too, trying to upload everything and dealing with everything. He's like, I just want to bring everything and put it on a desk and shake somebody's hand, right? Because there's still people out there.
Yep.
And he's not a baby boomer.
Right.
He's probably, I don't know, maybe close to my age, maybe 3 or 4 years older. It's just.
Well, we're in that weird age. Like, I'm almost 40, right? You're what?
43.
So we grew up in this era where these people were raised by this older generation, where it was a little bit more simpler, and things were done with a handshake and a firm grip, and you looked people in the eye, and when your parents were talking, you shut your mouth. And so we kind of grew up in that whole thing. And nowadays, it's a different.
It's different.
Yeah.
It's completely different. So we have to, adapt to that. And I think using technology as a stepping stone into that really kind of gives us, a little toes in the water type deal.
Right.
So I think it's important.
Avoiding the fear of technology and learning to embrace it and being one of the companies that does that kind of stuff. It's amazing how many people are afraid to change.
Yeah.
They're stuck in their ways. They're used to doing things the way they've always done it, but they don't realize that if they would just refine their process, they could be so much more productive.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we see too, is maybe an older generation of appraisers, because they're afraid of technology taking over and making their jobs obsolete, they decline all of it.
Yeah.
So they don't want to, but the trick is how are you going to work with it? So don't let your job, be taken over by technology, but let it be helped by technology.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, there are 2 people that are the most feared people in a real estate transaction. Like, as soon as you say their name,
I have a feeling I know
blood
one of
pressure
those.
goes up. First is inspectors.
Yeah.
The second is appraisers.
Yeah.
Because everybody's like, is my house going to appraise or not? Do you have any advice for anybody on how to kind of lower that stress and be like, hey, look, we're just normal people that are just going out there to get the data. We aren't out there to screw you. We have no ties to the buyer. There's no benefit for us to come in low, or there's certain guidelines, because especially with VA, whenever somebody sees VA, because they have such tight requirements, everybody's pucker factor doubles. So is there anything that they can do ahead of time to kind of bring that pressure down and know that? Because the reality is, if their agent's doing their job, there should be no concern.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah, we shouldn't make that offer in the first place if we, as an agent, believe that our buyer is going to overpay.
Well, it doesn't matter about if you submit the offer. It's a matter of the listing agent running those comps to make sure that, and looking at that offer. Because I had a house in Shirts that we got an offer on it. It was a full price offer plus. And what I mean by plus is they added the closing costs into it. And I told my client, I'm like, look, if you take this offer, you're not going to appraise. Because I ran the comps, and I was like, we already listed you. I listed you probably like at the top of the top. But because you're in Shirts, it was a $200,000 house. I was like, but because we're in Shirts, I was like, I thought we could get $200,000 for it. And but I was like, it's probably going to do 197, 198. I was like, but it's not going to appraise it. I think it was like 207 or something like that. And I was like, so your risk is putting it back on the market, or you're going to have to drop whatever it doesn't appraise.
Right.
So I gave him that notice ahead of time, so he didn't have to. He knew what the worst case scenario was.
See, and that's good. Do not a lot of agents do that type of thing? If they see trouble coming, or is it that they may not realize?
If he's the listing agent, right, he's going to do his part. Not to say that in the heat of the market, he's going to stretch those numbers out as tight as he can get it, because it's going to get offers.
Sure.
You're going to go that way, or you're going to go the opposite way, listed a little on the lower end, and try to get a multiple offer and get as much, right? So, if that's correct, right? So, he's done his part. As a buyer's agent, it's my job to go in there and look at those comps, or do my own due diligence for my buyer and say, hey, look, I'm looking at all these houses for sale in this area and this square footage. This is kind of tight. This is like up there. And if I know my buyer needs help with some closing costs, and I know that let's say it's a VA loan, they're not putting any money down because either they don't have it or whatever, and we need some help with, or we ask for some closing costs. I already know that from the lender right away, that how much they need or how much we're going to ask for. If I see the house is up on the top end of it, I'm going to contact him and say, hey, look, here's the deal. We're interested in the property, but here's the problem. We're going to have to over ask $4,000 or $5,000. How confident, here's what I came up with. How confident are you on that price? Do you think they'll appraise? He's going to tell me right away, either yes or no.
Sure.
Or he's going to slow bait me and be like, I don't know, I'm going to just, send the offer like a jerk. And so, and
I
so,
don't do that.
And so it's kind of on us to alert the client and say, hey, look, I want you to know going into this is this may not feel right.
Right.
You can kick the ball down the course and see what happens. We don't know where it's going to end up. I got a really strong feeling that it's not going to appraise. So that's kind of where we need to call it. We need to be the professional and hope that they did their part.
And set expectations.
Right up front, I had a really surprising one, a deal that I actually just kind of fell through because we got some financing issues. But I had a house that we had under contract. They had it priced at $249. We ended up making a full price offer because they wouldn't come off the price. And the appraisal comes in, and it's an FHA, deal. But the appraisal come in, and it was really high. And I was like really high, like 20 over. And I was like, wow, that's really far off. So I don't know what happened, but luckily for my clients, they're getting instant equity, right? So we hold that information to ourselves. We don't even tell the seller, like, hey, look, here's
Sure.
It came in way over. But so I don't know. I mean, you can tell us, like,
and on the flip side of that, if you're the buyer's agent and you're about to let them go under contract for an amount that or you have a feeling is higher than its market value, you're not really doing a service for your buyers.
Not really.
It
depends on their motivation levels, and like if they just absolutely love the house, the market's moving so fast that every offer that they put in is just went to crap and didn't get accepted for whatever reason.
Right.
If they're just so emotionally invested in the property,
Right.
it's like paying full price for a car.
Yeah.
You going to pay sticker or you going to pay invoice or somewhere in between?
Right.
How motivated are you to get that? So a lot of people will. I mean, they're not going to overpay because obviously the appraiser's going to come in and go, "Hey, man, it's worth $220."
Right.
You'd be surprised.
You'd
be surprised how many phone calls I get from buyers agents disappointed in the appraisal that came in lower than the contract amount.
Right.
Which we, from our point of view, we have no vested interest in anybody. Our
That's not
client,
looking out for their client.
yeah,
I know.
Our client is the bank, the borrower's lending institution, to make sure that they're not over leveraged on their collateral.
Yeah.
So that is our job, is to give our client, the bank, reliable numbers to go off of. So it's always surprised me when buyers will call you disappointed that it didn't appraise, but you're protecting them from paying over market value. And if they, like you were saying, if they're super motivated and they want to pay over market, that's fine, but at least they know.
And that's the last thing an appraiser wants to do.
Right, you don't
Is
want to kill
turn
the
in
deal.
an appraisal that the market value has been stated is below the contract price. It basically opens up a whole can of worms. But if you're doing your job and you're being honest, but I feel like sometimes the conversation, there's sometimes agents that I'm not sure that.
So here's what I think happens, and this is my thought. I think a lot of agents don't do a lot of transactions throughout the year. I think a lot of the percentage, and we know what the percentages are, and I feel like a lot of people see that higher price point on the contract, and they already, and I've been guilty of this before, looking at the commission amount. It's not the way to do it, but you end up, it's just an inherent thing that you do. You look at the commission amount and you're like, oh yeah, that'll be great. And then they get there, down the road, they're like 2 weeks before close.
Yeah.
and they're hungry.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe they get a little bit emotionally attached to that number, that commission amount. And maybe that's the motivation for them to pitch a fit about it. But if it were me in the initial portion, I'd be like, okay, well, this is an opportunity for me to get this cheap for my clients.
There you go.
Let me see if I can negotiate the price down.
There you go, which is going to serve you better in the long run than that single
I
commission.
save them 10 grand just by
Yeah.
being able to negotiate it down. 10 grand, like holy crap!
They're going
And
to tell
then-
everybody.
Right. And then it's I get a little bit lower of a commission, but what's the point? If I do these clients the right way that I should, they tell their brothers or sisters, whoever, they refer me one deal, it makes up tenfold for whatever I just lost.
Right.
And at the end of the day, if you're doing it from an ethical point, it doesn't really matter, right? So what happens? Like I've been known, and David's been known to give an entire commission away, over $5,000 away at one time, just to make a deal close. And we don't benefit from that at all, except for the fact that we hope at the end of the day that they refer us out and they remember that and they say, "Man, my realtor, man, this guy gave up a over $5,000 commission."
People remember how they were
Right,
treated.
and it's like I don't understand. Like at the end of the day, if we weren't able to negotiate it down, then I'd go back to the lender and say, "Hey, can we dispute whatever or can the sellers dispute this so we can kind of get it changed a little bit and so we can meet in the middle ground?"
Sure.
Like maybe not get full value, but can you save the deal? What's it take to save the deal?
Sure.
And my clients don't have the money to put down cash to make the difference up, right? Especially if it's a VA, they expect to not go in really with money down. Sometimes
Right.
they do.
See, and like Brandy was saying, an appraiser takes no, at least speaking from our point of view, we take no joy in busting deals. We know the phone calls are going to start from angry listing agents.
Yeah.
We get all that.
And anytime it comes in under contract price, those reports take us twice the amount of time because, man, are we making sure, pulling all sorts of different data to make sure they've gotten everything for their adjustments you could get. You've got every last penny out of that.
Before we turn in something that's going to set off the alarm bells, we want to make triple sure that we're correct.
So you guys go out and like typical whatever happens. You go out to a property, you appraise it, do all the paperwork, you go back to your office, comes in under value. I bet, and I'm just betting, that your first reaction is to go, well, let me double check all this stuff.
Yep.
Absolutely.
You don't just
Yep.
shoot it off and be like, oh, missed that one.
Right.
You know?
A good appraiser does that.
Right.
Yes.
So you guys double check it and make sure, like the word. I mean, what benefit does it do your business to start creating a bunch of trouble
Right.
and you be the appraiser that always comes in low?
Right.
Yeah.
It's a fine line because you don't want to be the people that just come in at the numbers to make deals work.
Right.
But you also don't. I'm just being realistic. You don't want to be thought of as deal killers. So it's just important to always go off the data.
Yeah.
We're just appraisals are doing nothing but reflecting market activity.
Yeah. So me and Heejin, David's wife, just went through a GRI course. We're getting our GRI designation. It's a 3-step process to get this designation, and it's a total of 90 hours. And the first one that we took was a contracts to closing, and there was a bit in there about appraisals and all that. And there was a bunch of stuff going around the classroom. There's like 60, 70 people in here, and there's a bunch of stuff going around about appraisal stuff. And one of the myths was that appraisers say they don't want to talk to the agents.
Oh,
I can't
yeah.
talk to you.
Yeah.
Right? I can't talk to you. We don't need to speak together, right?
Right.
But that's not really the case.
You can't talk value.
Right. You can't start talking values. But
Yeah.
so, what are your guys' opinion on, and kind of how do you guys receive? Say I'm the listing agent, and I've got my stuff done. I did all my work, and I got the house listed. We are under contract, and I hear the appraisal's coming up. Typically, they'll reach out to me and say, "This is getting scheduled for the thing or whatever."
Sure.
I'll see it on my showing time deal. David taught me early on in the game to go ahead and print out a full report of comps. Support, document. And what I do is I go into the RPR and I create a full seller's report, market analysis on there. It's like 60 pages. It's overwhelmingly, full of data.
Sure.
Hardly irrefutable, but it's down to the individual appraiser and which comps he's actually going to choose. So whether the ones that I chose, the 5 or 6 that I chose,
Sure.
line up with the 5 or 6 that you should be getting, are going to be the same. Good chances that it are, because I usually try to keep them tight. That's something I learned from my buddy over here. So I put this packet on the counter.
I take them every time. I love it.
Yep.
I love
Does
it.
that not help you out
No,
like, tremendously?
It does help. The more information that we have to analyze, the better.
Because if you come in $5,000 or $6,000 off,
Sure.
and then I'm in about either on dime or a little bit above, what are your thought processes on that? How do you take that data and would you adjust?
It's mostly just looking for any kind of comps that we missed.
Right.
I mean, I want to see everything that I want to see your thought process during the listing process, because I want to see, did you use just a price per square foot that
Right.
got you way off?
Right.
I've had people where their neighbor's 1,200 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
They're 1,500 square feet,
Right.
but they looked at their neighbor's price per square foot and applied that to their 1,500 square foot house.
Yeah.
Screwed the whole deal up.
Yeah.
So we want to see the thought process. For us, it's always helpful to see what information you use to price that.
Sure.
And it prompts questions with us. Well, I see this property in your packet that you provided us with. Why? Go ahead and talk to me about why.
Why you chose that one?
Why did you choose that property?
Yeah.
Because I chose this.
And then just everything you can give to the appraiser. So a helpful thing too is the sheet of updates. You know, all the updates had been made to the house, just so that we've got that marked. I also think something that's not included a lot, an executed contract.
Yeah.
We are hunting down, at least in
I've
our
been reached
office,
out to that
hunting
before, too.
down executed contracts, fully executed, dated in the execution box.
Dated in the execution docs, please.
What? People don't do that?
No.
It's funny.
Lenders will send us stuff all the time, and they're busy, and so they're not looking over it a lot, and so we get stuff that's not dated in execution box. Then we're reaching out. If you've got a copy of a survey, don't assume that the lender's given it to us. Anything, just don't assume that we've been sent anything.
Right.
And give us everything.
Yeah.
Do brand names matter?
Do what now?
Do brand names matter?
As far as
Appliances.
updates,
Let's say appliances like Bosch versus Hisense, or Pergo versus Fergo. You know,
in some of the custom homes, those type of updates may matter. The
More on
answer
marketability.
the answer in the
Right.
appraisal world is always it depends.
Yeah.
right? It's
So-
us too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, if it's like an outlier, what they define as an outlier in this neighborhood, say it's a 2-story house, it's like the largest floor plan, right?
Sure.
And these guys had the money to go in and they upgraded every single thing in the house. And then 2 years later, they came in and put Wolf, stove in and
Sure.
all the, all this crazy crap. And they've got a top of the line water system and all this stuff. And it's now an outlier.
Yep, that gets
How do you
thrown
guys
out.
deal with that?
So while analyzing data, our outliers.
What if the subject property is that one?
There is a definitely a possibility that you may have over improved for your neighborhood,
Right.
For the area. That
And
is,
we're going to have that issue, and I've already given Heason's got a listing, and I've already given him your information to get appraisal done before
Yeah.
Yes.
we list it, because it is 800 and some change square foot larger than the next largest house in the community.
oh wow,
It has probably 45 or 50 solar panels on it. It's got a metal roof. There's just like so many different unique features about that house. And I told him, I'm like,
That's crazy.
if I go based off of the price per square foot for the community, which is averaging about 158, regardless of the size of the houses, because they're all pretty much the same, you have a $750,000 house.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get you $750,000 for this house. I
Yeah.
can't. There's nothing around here that will compare it. And I was like, that's why we need to get an appraisal, because I can't do you justice and come up with an arbitrary number
Correct.
that may be too high, and then you get your hopes up because you got a contract, and then the appraisal comes in and you're like bubble popped, or I listed an arbitrary price, and the appraisal comes in, and then they've got $20,000-$30,000 of equity and stuff like that. So.
right. And I would figure that's tough for y'all, walking that fine line of trying to keep your client happy, but meanwhile placing the listing price
Right.
in a realistic, in the ballpark of where it should
Well,
be.
that's why I make them
without
mad at you.
offending. Yeah. Blame it on the appraiser.
Right.
And we've been pulled in too recently. Like sometimes if it's just over the average days on market, we've had a listing agent call us. They talked to their buyer. They said, all right, we're sitting a little bit longer than we should be on this. And I think sometimes agents, you've got just sellers that are adamant, this is what I'm selling my house for, don't mess with that number, and you feel like your hands are tied as an agent. And so when you sit for too long, they'll talk to their seller and they say, I think it's worth our money to get an appraisal. And then it starts a conversation. So the agent's able to walk in, look at the appraisal, and they're saying, I know you want to sell your house for $300. This appraisal just came in at $260. What are we going to do?
Right.
Yeah, I've kind of got a similar situation. Well, I have an exact similar situation right now where I'm listing for a client. I did all my research and did all the numbers initially before I do 2 sets of comps before I do listing appointments. So I'll typically just do just a blanket type deal, like what I know of the property, and then run a set of comps. And when I go to the property, I'll kind of look around and see, okay, well, what's changed and what's updated. You know, if the kitchen's been redone and they spent like $18,000 on it or whatever, like I'll put that in there and try to adjust the valuations. But what I like about RPR, if any of the agents out there are listening that don't use RPR, I'm looking at David right now.
I do just fine. I've only had one house not appraised, and I let them know.
So they have a really cool thing on there where you can slide adjust the valuation depending on the subjects that are near it. So you have all the comps like in a solid row line, just like on the MLS, CMA. But it has a slider bar, and you look at the property to the right of it, and you go, is that one, if you go through the photos, is that one better or worse than that subject? So you click it once, it adjusts the valuation $1,000 or $2,000. And then you say, oh, man, the granite in that one's way nicer. I'm going to click it up one more. And
so that's fantastic because I feel like that's more similar to an appraisal report because appraisers use a weighted average.
Yeah.
So they don't just take whatever the adjusted values are, an average amount, and come up with that's what automated valuation stuff that's running on the internet does. But that kind of stuff gives it more of a weighted average, which is nice.
Yeah, well, it's
got to bust your bubble, but I have that too.
Right,
it's called a calculator.
Right, but it also, it's also that's an also very analog way of doing extra steps when it's right there with the tech. This is what we're talking about with the technology, but it also has a valuation workbook in there to where it says if you have a pool, right, and the pool was installed after the build or whatever. You can put the date the pool is installed, how much it costs. It will automatically start percentagizing. I don't know how accurate it is, but it does a really good job of reevaluating that pool price and adding it into the cost of the home.
You're setting my alarm bells up.
Right. But, and this is the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I'd like you guys to in offline time, maybe we take a look at that. And I want to show you what that does just to see what your take is on it, because I don't use that portion of it. I just use the normal slide bar for the seller's, deal, the comps.
Right.
But there's a whole separate part of a valuation workbook. So, like, if they've got added granite countertops or they did a kitchen remodel and it cost them $20,000, you put that amount in there. And if it's 5 years ago, it only gives them like $3,000 worth of value.
Yeah.
Sure. And I'm just using round numbers here. But what I'm saying is it I don't know how accurate that is. I mean, I don't think that it would be.
See, and there's no way to truly know until we dig into the market area and see what buyers are contributing for that. The most common questions we get are, how much does a covered patio add? How much does a pool add? And the answer is always, it depends. It depends on what the data says.
You could have the same exact house in one neighborhood that put up solar panels, and they're getting $15,000 for their solar panels.
Sure.
You can have that same exact house in another neighborhood, and they're getting nothing.
Right.
Because there's no market reaction to it.
Sure.
We've pulled solar panel versus non-solar panel, everything equivalent with other houses, and there's no increase.
Yeah.
And we hate it when that happens.
Yeah.
You're like trying to get them something for it, but if the data doesn't,
because we try to make a statement in there that says, the appraiser acknowledges that this amenity may improve marketability, but unfortunately, according to the data,
demographic area,
there's just nothing to justify an increase in value.
Yeah, so we actually did a podcast before about it was one of our blog posts. We just kind of summarized our blog post, and it was kind of going over like what money that you spend, how does it directly reflect the price of the house, or what do you think that you can get out of it on the other side of the deal, right? And so we kind of dove into that, but we really didn't talk specific details and all that, but we were just kind of reading some data that we found on the internet. But I don't know, I think it's important for people to understand, like this deal that I've got right now, the client used to be a real estate agent 10 years ago. So he has very strong ideas of what he wants and what his thoughts are. And it's in an older neighborhood. And when you got an older neighborhood like that, when John down the street sells his house and he tells you over a beer that he sold it for $275,000 in a week,
Yeah.
and you go look it up and he sold it for $225,000 with $6,000 in closing costs in 45 days. You know, they can't verify that.
Right.
He's just talking to Johnny over a beer, and then it's
Right.
now it's become spread through the community that these houses are selling for whatever,
Right.
and that they were only on the market for a week, and he sold it really fast, and they were gone. But I think people's perception on time, because it's not their house that's for sale, they see the sign go in the yard, a month or two goes by, and they're like, oh, the sign's gone, I guess the house sold.
Right.
And they think it was like a week for some
Right.
odd reason. But it's strange how, these older neighborhoods, you don't have a lot of sales data. And then a street over from the neighborhood, you've got a brand new subdivision building out for 260s and 270s. And so automatically the thought is, well, if those houses are selling, they're not as
Right.
nice as my house. It may be new, but it's not as nice as my house.
Right.
Right.
And it's smaller than my house, but it's
Right.
selling for 260. Isn't mine worth 250?
Right. And no way would we use those as comps.
There's no way.
If your chronological age is way off from
Yeah.
our subject,
Yeah,
that's
I
not
go like
appropriate.
5 or 10 years at the max.
Well, like I was talking to him about this, I was like, it's like the best way to talk to a client about that when they bring up new and they're not new is be like, all right, you have a whatever the year the house is, Chevy Malibu, and then you have a
Terrible car.
2020 Chevy Malibu, right? Which one's going to be worth more?
Yeah.
And just leave it to that, and then they're going to have to say the 2020 Chevy Malibu.
Right.
Yeah,
And then you'd be like, well, why?
Yeah.
Well, because it's got less miles, it's probably in better condition, it's new, it's got the new car smell. Okay, so what are we going to list your house for?
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, it's a tough conversation. I would, if it had been any other client, I definitely wouldn't have. I say this, but I probably wouldn't have gone and taken the listing just because sometimes it can be a fruitless,
Right.
journey. You work hard, you spend money advertising these houses on the internet, and we do all the work. We spend the money on the Matterport tour stuff, and that stuff's not free for sure. It's time taken out of our day, and we spend a lot of time doing it. But we take those ones that are a little bit of a challenge sometimes, and then you just got to let the seller understand over time that there's nothing happening. And I tell them right at the listing appointment, if they want to go higher than what my comp is, I'll tell them right off the bat, if we don't get showings in the first 2 weeks, there's a problem.
Right.
Either your house is in a bad condition and people aren't interested, or it's overpriced. Because clients are not going to go and look at a house that's $20,000 outside of their price range for the most part, unless they're just window shopping.
Right.
They're just bored. They're going to go $25,000 over their budget and then try to see if they can make something work.
Right.
But you just kind of got to let time take its toll and show them and be there for the client and explain to them throughout the way. We've had 2 or 3 showings, and every single person, every agent has come back to me and said, hey, that's overpriced.
Right.
Do you think it'll appraise? And my answer is, I think we're close.
Yeah.
I don't know. The valuation that I put on it. So, it's just one of those deals that, like, I think what you guys are doing is important, and I don't think enough clients or people that are selling their homes carry as much weight for the conversation to bring an appraisal in and get it done ahead of time, because they don't. What's it cost to get an appraisal done? $400, $450,
depends.
$500, depends on the square footage.
Depends.
Right? So,
Standard price is around $500.
right. So that's not chump change for
Right.
most people to spend on something. But if you're committed and this is what you want to do, and you're very confident, it's like throwing out a bet, right? So
Right.
I encourage people to get the appraisal done ahead of time. And it's not saving me any work. I'm still doing the work. But we're verifying our findings.
And this is something that tripped me up when I first started appraising. Sometimes it seems like the whole process is a little backwards, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're getting the opinion of market value after you've
After
already
the fact.
negotiated a deal.
Yeah.
It seems strange to me.
I've always wondered that myself. I look at that sort of the same way you're probably looking at it. Is like, wouldn't the lender, upon their approval, or like, obviously they give them a pre-approval, which is about as worthless as any piece of paper that you can print it on. But a fully underwritten one is different. I would feel like if you're going to pick out a subject property, they would go ahead and just do that right away as soon as it goes under contract, like, or maybe even before. I don't know. There's got to be a way to get that changed around.
I know. I guess it's just the fact that an appraisal is a snapshot in time. So if that property sits for 6 months, what's the market done in 6 months?
Sure. Oh,
And
yeah.
if you get that value when you're about to sell and it's like, okay, we're worth 260. Well, have we taken, we're lucky right now in San Antonio, we're not seeing that. We're seeing majorly increases for the most. So
Yeah, I wonder if a seller was to get an appraisal and say it was within like 60 days of getting the appraisal done, right? I wonder if you could, once the deal gets under contract, you send it over to the listing agent and say, hey, can you send this to the lender?
People try.
People try,
try.
yeah.
You're like, hey, can you accept that?
Lenders want their own reports.
Well, it's unbiased, right?
Right.
So it's, and there's multiple layers of like security in that because the lender doesn't directly reach out and say, hey, Colby, I need you to come do this one, right?
Sure.
So can you explain how that process kind of works with the broker companies or whatever they call them?
So with Dodd-Frank, I believe it was 2008, Obama had created, so there was too much pressure. The view was that there was too much pressure on appraisers. And I remember those days. We would get calls from loan officers that would say, hey, I need this guy's refining. I need this value at 225. If you can get 225, you can have the assignment, which is dangerous. But that's the way that lenders used to treat us. Like we were target, we were number hunters and we need to hit that number, which is not the right way to do it. So in 2008, they implemented Dodd-Frank, which required them for loans that are going to be sold to Fannie and Freddie to outsource to insert a third party essentially in the process between us and the lenders to keep value pressure at a minimum.
It's a buffer.
Yeah, so which is good and bad. I think it's helped transparency. It's helped objectivity. It's helped on bias and all that type of things, but it's slowed the process.
increased cost for buyers.
Increased cost because those appraisal management companies are now the middlemen who are trying to get their cut too. The goal was to cut down on influence on the appraiser, and I think it's done some good things as well as some adverse things.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how it works. Most of our clients now are appraisal management companies that we report to them. We don't talk directly to the lender. Everything goes through this third party, so it slows everything down, which is not great. Which is something they need to address in the industry. Because, like we were saying, millennial buyers or buyers, period, they want the process faster, not slower.
Yeah.
They don't need more roadblocks during this whole thing, which is so.
And when you think an appraiser's been sitting on an order, you may want to ask what day that their office received the order because and what due date the lender approved. Because often they're just like, well, you've had this for 3 weeks. I'm like, well, we just got it 2 days ago.
Right.
Right.
Because those AMCs will shop around. So they're basically trying to get lower fees.
So they can cream of the crop.
And they'll just hang on to it forever. We'll see that same order come through our email inbox for like a week until they finally will say, sure, you can have it.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare.
That's nice of them.
Yeah.
Do you have any closing remarks, David? Anything? Any other questions for him?
No.
Okay.
I can't think of any. I think we've exhausted the appraisals.
We've solved every problem there is. Yeah.
Every house shall now appraise.
I feel like there's probably a whole other episode. I really appreciate you guys coming out. It's been awesome. It's super informative. There's a lot of stuff that we went over too, and I think it's valuable for people, even if they're not considering selling or if they've never done a real estate transaction. I think it's valuable for them to understand the process and kind of the ins and outs of it and sort of the tragedy parts of it, because people don't know what they don't know, right? So
exactly,
it's one of those deals to where they hear the word appraisal and they think it means one definitive thing, but there's so much that goes in with it. And like David said before, like it's one of the bad words in real estate. Like a lot of people get kind of shook up about it, but
we'd like to change that.
Yeah.
We don't want to be thought of as the boogeyman in the process. Whatever we can do to get the word out there that we want to be an asset to all the realtors involved, the parties involved. We just want to remain objective and really give you a realistic picture of what this house is worth.
Yeah,
and
I think you'll do that by continuing to do what you're already doing. I think the cream does rise to the top in this sort of situation. Like the ones that are the top performers and the ones that show the high ethical standard and the ones that are doing the right thing and the extra hard work. Eventually, it may take you a long time, but over time, the ones that are not doing a good job are going to get pushed away, and they're just going to fall off the.
Can we talk about closing dates?
Absolutely,
real fast.
Absolutely.
The most common phone call we get is a realtor in a panic, convinced that they're going to miss their closing date.
Right.
We're closing by X date.
Yeah.
You just got this report whenever. I think it's important for realtors to understand that before we ever take on the assignment, we bid on all these jobs.
Yeah.
So we know when the lender, not when the agents want the report in, but when the lender is requiring the report to be in,
right.
And they will either give us the assignment based on whether or not we can meet that turn time and fee and all that kind of stuff. But I understand why realtors call us worried about it,
right.
But I want to give them some sense of ease that
the lender approved that date.
The lender approved that based on the closing date that's agreed upon.
Yeah.
So I just want to. We get
closing.
We get crisis phone calls from realtors all the time, and I feel for them. And I feel for them. And our common response is, "Don't worry, we've worked this out with the lender. Yeah. They know exactly when it's coming in. We don't miss due dates. And so as long as your lender's okay with it, then everything's gonna go in the order it should."
A little closing tip about closing.
Yeah, no, that's good information for people to know, because I think a lot of times, like I think I've talked to appraisers before that have contacted me on deals, and he told me the same thing. Like, hey, look, man, I get it. I just got the file. He's like, I'll have it turned around 24 hours. But he's like, I will meet my deadline.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand what he meant by that, but now that you said that, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Good deal. Well, thanks so much, guys. We're going to close it up. We're just over an hour here. We're going to be back with another episode with you guys very soon about Texas Measurement Solutions, right?
Fantastic.
And then if you guys want to check these guys out, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you guys?
Sure. Actually, if they want to go, for Colby Dunagan Appraisals, you can just go to colbydunaganappraisals.com. Check us out there. And then if they want to kind of get a preview for Texas Measurement Solutions, they can go Instagram. We're all over Instagram and Facebook at Texas Measure. And if you want to reach out to us over phone, even if you're a realtor and you have a question, give us a call.
Yeah.
Our number is 210-248-9219, and I answer all the phone calls.
Because when it comes to appraisals and this price, size matters.
That's right.
It does.
Right.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll put you guys on the next episode.